Welcome to the Elokus podcast. This is class number 7. Class number 7 in the 9th discourse in the book. This discourse is called the Chodsheichem, and this is the which is the 9th discourse in the overall book. B'shasha Ekdimu 5672. In class number 7 in chapter 33, and today we will conclude Be'ezrat Hashem, chapter 33. Okay, so we left off in last class that the whole idea that he's trying to explain. We're following the progression of lights, how the Or Pnimi develops, how the internal light, the light that infuses all of creation, how it develops from its very origins of origins. And as we're learning in the discourse, that the initial light that is meant to be an Or Pnimi is not an expression of God as God truly is, but from the very get-go, it is already an adjusted light. It's like within the soul itself, there is the soul's energy. The soul reveals itself, and then there is the powers of the soul. Now, obviously, the powers, but when they originate in the soul, they are completely undetectable and they're one with the soul. And the same is that this secondary energy that becomes the life force of the Or Pnimi is first completely absorbed in the Or Ein Sof. But yet, again, as soon as the Or Ein Sof had a will to create worlds, he kind of cordons off some element of that light that is already the Esa Spheres Agnuza, is the 10 hidden Sphirot. But then we were learning earlier how it evolves to become more, these lights start to become more discernible. And we went through 3 stages in general. There is this light when it's still before the Tzimtzum, the Or Ein Sof when it's still when it's Esa Spheres Agnuza. So there, it's not at all in an existence of 10, it's only 1. You don't even know 10. Then when it emerges in the state of the Kav, that's already 10 points, as we discussed. It's a line, and then it's already 10 points. But the lights are still mufshat and completely abstract and completely undefinable yet, although there's 10. And then when they go into the Kalim, which means they for kind of like what we say when it gets to Atzilus and it goes Oros Bekalim, lights in the vessels then bring out the character of the light. But in this Maamor, that's what we learned in the earlier discourses. In this Maamor, we are learning how once it goes into the vessels, whole order of higher and lower. And higher and lower means that there's certain sphirot or lights that are more intense, that have more light to them, and then the lights get diminished. So that for that reason, Chachma is very high, and Malchus is considered very low. Chachma is the beginning, and Malchus is the end. And what makes this be low and this high is because there's more light in Chachma and far less light in Malchus. And the reason for all of that is because once the light goes into a vessel, then depending on the nature of the vessel, that will decide how much the light can infuse that vessel. The more subtler the vessel, the more light can come in. There's always the rule: the more vessel, the less light. The more light, the less vessel. And you see it physically in our body as well. The head is the most powerful part in the human body, yet it occupies the least space in the human body. It has the least vessel, but it has the most energy. And the feet are half the entire body, are a person's legs. They have the least light, but they have the most substance. Torso, but much more going on in the torso than in the feet. There's a lot of vessel in the feet, and yet it's got the least energy of the soul, the least refined, the level of energy is less, and so on and so forth. So that's just an example of this idea. So we were learning in the discourse how he went through, in a particular manner, how the light in the intellect, how in Chachma there's much more light than Bina, and that's all because Bina, which is the analytical side of mind is far more vessel-y. It's more wordy, words, vessels. It's more embedded already into definition. And Chachma is the vessel is very, 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 very abstract. So the light is very sharp and intense. And then we were learning in general in the last two classes how when you measure up intellect regarding emotions, that's when you get into a real state of vessel, because the emotions have much more self-awareness. Emotions are self-centered versus intellect in general. Even the bina of intelligence is in a state of not about self. It's about getting to know something. It's about stepping out of self. It's a clean vessel. And the vessels of emotions are far more bent inward towards self, and that means it's a thicker vessel, a denser vessel. And for that reason, we can't compare the light of the soul that shines in intelligence compared to the light that of the soul, the energy of the soul that's in emotions. And then he explained in last class how that is in the service of God. Then when you're meditating in the intellect, there's a whole lot of divine light. Once you get to the emotions and the emotions get excited, the light is lessened because you feel much more yourself. And what you're not even no more in touch with the God in the mind. You're actually perceiving the reality of the divine. We learned in last class. But in the heart, you're getting excited about the fact that God is wonderful. And not just that he's wonderful, but he's not just that he's awesome, but that you feel that he is awesome for me, for myself. And that's why you're quite far away from that light, from the experience of the pure divine. However, you're much more excited. That's the idea of excitement. That's what we learned in the last classes. So then that begs the big question. If that's the case, why even bother with emotions? Why shouldn't we just leave everything if we can engage and we can touch God himself or the divine, whatever level of the divine that we can reach with our mind, and actually experience the light, actually experience the godliness, especially in the Chachma. But even in the Bina, you're actually grasping the divine. Why would we then continue on and bring about the evolution or evolve it into emotions to get excited about it, when by doing that, we're just diminishing and distancing ourselves from the higher experience? That's going to be his question now. Now, how do we know maybe just emotions are inevitable? If you're going to meditate on something great and you're meditating truly and you're really connecting, the heart is just going to get in and is going to pull you away. But then it would be a negative thing, and then we would be told to fight the emotion, not to allow the emotions to happen. But we know that emotions are encouraged. Quite on the contrary, the whole point of the meditation is to lead to the emotions. There is a mitzvah of meditating and knowing, but there's even a greater mitzvah, if you might say, V'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha. You should love God, your God, with all your heart and all your soul. And emotions and love and fear is a very important component of our connection to God and of our Judaism. In many places, it's explained that the whole point of getting to know Hashem is so that we can get emotionally bound up with him. But if emotions is a far lesser experience, what would be the virtue of the emotion? So he's going to explain that yes, it's true, the light becomes much less in the emotion, but the whole purpose of creation is to bring everything down into the material physical world and to transform the human experience, the earthly experience. When things are in the intellect, even though there's much more godliness, but there's much less world, there's much less self over there. God is encompassing you, surrounding you, or even if he's reaching you, he's reaching only your head. He's not reaching your rest of your human experience. He's not reaching your ego. He's not reaching the thicker part of self. And the whole desire of God is that we should transform the low, thicker, egotistical self and infuse that, penetrate over there with godliness. So although that will come by foregoing on the intensity of the light, that will come about through a diminishment of the godliness, yet that's what it takes. Now, obviously, ultimately, when Mashiach will come, we will be able to bring down the light of God as he is, unmitigated and unlimited, all the way down into the physical. And the physical and world and our emotions and our entire experience will be a vessel for that. But that's not what we're talking. That's the eventual reward and the eventual, ultimate state. But in as much as our while the work is in progress, while we are laboring to accomplish this, the best we can do in bringing godly light into our physical and more earthy self, which is the realm of the emotions, which he's going to explain now, the primary animal self, the primarily animalistic range in the human being. The animal soul is very emotional. The animal soul is not in great intelligence, is not known to be an intellectual. Its main, not that it doesn't have an intellect, but its main power is in emotion, because the animal soul is all about self, and emotion is self-excitement. So, and since the importance is to make over our physical behavior, to be driven towards holiness and godliness, so the way we do it is by activating emotions. Although in that process, yes, we will be a little more distant from God. That is the greater objective. And that is what he's explaining now. Hine, holding, again, the last part, maybe like 13, 12, between the 10 and 15 lines, before the end of chapter 33. It is a must. Shehi amidos. You have to have emotions. Ava, the love, the yira, and the fear. Behizgalu salev. And you have to feel those emotions in a very tangible way. In other words, there is a different kind of emotion where you're not really feeling the emotion in your heart. The excitement is taking place in the mind. It's more like the mind is feeling, I should be dancing, I should be excited, I should be fired up. And so it's a more intellectual type of an emotion. Now that emotion has a benefit because it's in the intellect, even though the fact that you're getting excited in your mind means you're already stepping out of the internal experience, like we spoke in the earlier classes. But still, there's much more light over there because there's less ego there, there's less self there, there's not yet so there's more light. So that kind of an emotion is a very beautiful emotion, meaning an emotion infused with more. Let's say you say, I love you, it's more about the you, less about the I. But when the emotion comes into the heart, the I occupies 80% of the emotion, and the you, who you're loving, is only 20% of the experience. But when the emotion is in the head, we might say it's the opposite. It's 80% the one you're loving, in our case God, and 20% self. If that's the case, why not? So then, would that suffice? The emotion in the head. They're called talumois. It's called tavuna. Tavuna. It's where the bina, tavuna is a word for understanding, but it's where the bina already has within it emotions. That's why the word tavuna has within it bein ubas, the son and the daughter, which are the two emotions of love and fear, but while they're part of the experience of bina. So there you have the best of both worlds. You have an emotion, you have an excitement, but you're still inside, you're not yet outside. And the answer is, no, that's not enough, as he says over here. In avoda, you have to bring the emotions down till you can actually feel it in your heart, which means the same excitement you can feel when you're hungry and you go into a pizza shop and you're waiting online. I'm sorry for the coarse example, but that's what we all can relate to. We're hungry and we're waiting for lunch, and and like it's, you're waiting online to order. You feel the drive, you feel the want, you feel the passion for the food, very, very, very much in your heart, very much as a fire in your heart. In the same way, you're supposed to feel the fire in prayer. You can literally feel it in your heart. The midot of love and fear has to be in the revealed part of the heart. And the reason is, and he gives two reasons. The idea that I said earlier is primarily the second reason. He gives first the first reason, which is obviously it's one reason which is divided in two. Number one, the fulfillment of mitzvahs, which are the actual deeds of a mitzvah, like putting on tefillin every day, lighting the Shabbos candles, giving tzedakah to people, helping people out, visiting the sick, all the mitzvot that we are given. Their engine, their fight, what motivates them is emotion. If you just have an intelligence, an intellectual appreciation of God, it won't necessarily really drive your mitzvah observance. That means, of course, if you're observant, you'll keep to the mitzvahs, but you won't be overly obsessed and overly driven to do mitzvahs. And the mitzvahs themselves will be a little drier. And the reason is because behavior is a very physical thing. Especially behavior in our physical body is very physical. And in order to be motivated, it needs physical energy. And emotions are much more physical because they're connected to the heart. And therefore they have a far more, it's a physical excitement. We discussed earlier, you feel it in your heart, your physical heart gets excited, the blood is pumping. And therefore the emotions become the soul of the mitzvahs. They become the drive of the mitzvahs. They become the engine, they motorize mitzvahs. So even though in terms of an abstract experience, you have a far greater and deeper experience in the intellect, but it can remain disconnected from a mitzvah observance. It can mean that the person is having these very great meditative experiences and where their mind becomes very filled with godliness, but it doesn't translate into observance. And even if it does translate into observance, meaning that obviously if you're so conscious of God, you're going to do his mitzvahs, but there's a certain disconnect between the energy of the mind, the energy of the experience of the meditation, and the mitzvah. The mitzvah could be kind of sluggish and heavy and uninspired, and then you're doing it based on something that you once experienced, an intelligence, this is good, but you don't feel, there's no fire in the mitzvah. The mitzvah itself is not alive. And that's because it's lacking the connector. The connector is the emotions. Because on one hand, the emotions are a little bit more spiritual than action, than behavior. They're still and on the other hand, because they're the internal element of a person's, but on the other hand, they're also closer to behavior, and it's also more connecting to physical action. So you can see it physically as well. Intellect is in the mind, the mind manifests in the brain, which is higher. And then the emotions are associated with the heart. Now the heart, the difference between the mind and the heart is that most of the limbs of actions are plugged into the torso, right? Your hands, your feet are all plugged, where behavior takes place, plugged into the heart, into the torso, where the torso is the place of the heart. The head, the mind, is sitting in its own compartment. And if you look at a human being, you kind of can see it's almost like the person has two. If you divide it, you see three compartments. But the torso and the legs feel like kind of there's a certain flow that is direct, because you don't really. If you look at the body, you can notice that there is the bottom of if you examine, but generally it goes directly down. However, when it comes to the head, the head is like a separate thing, and it's connected with a hose, which is the neck, it's a narrow connection. So it's almost like you shouldn't chas v'shalom, but you like screw off the head and put it back on, that kind of thing. It's its own compartment, and just like it is physically that way, it is in psychologically or internally, spiritually, it's also that way. Everything that's taking place in the head is a little disconnected from the body. And therefore, a head experience does not necessarily infuse your behavior. But your heart gets excited and infuses the behavior. It's one. It's one with the behavior. That's what he's saying over here. This is related to the doing the mitzvahs in the literal sense. Like it says in Tanya. The Ava v'yira, that love and fear, in chapter 4. Alter Rebbe explains that love and fear, makar, they're the source, mitzvah saseh, of the positive commandments, or mitzvah lo saseh, and the prohibitive commandments. The positive commandments are motivated by love. You're supposed to actually feel excitement and fervor when you're doing a mitzvah. And the prohibitive commandments are motivated by fear. The ultimate way of doing a mitzvah is that when a prohibitive commandment, not doing a sin, is actually when there's a, God forbid, a temptation coming away, a person suddenly freezes in fear. You actually feel the fear. You get scared that I might sin. You actually feel it as a fear. Like as if you feel a physical fear when you are threatened by something. There's something that is endangering your life. So you get suddenly, you freeze up, you tense up. So that kind of experience should really be the optimal when a person has like a something that is provoking a sin. It should like behave. And the Alter Rebbe says over there that the one who fulfills the mitzvah truthfully, that's why you need emotions for motivating mitzvahs. And the intellect won't suffice. It's the same idea that we stuck earlier, because intellect is removed. It's higher than the than another thing. Because since the primary thing is that God wants us to purify the lower world, the dark world, the unholy world. So the greatest objective over here is to transform the human experience, which is the animalistic experience. The human experience is very selfish with the animal soul, which is the unholy klipa, the realm of the unholy, the impure. And the point of it is to make over the animal soul, because the objective is to transform darkness to light. So you have to get into your animal soul. You have to infiltrate. To infiltrate into the animal soul, if you're speaking if you're speaking like an intellectual, you're not speaking the language of the animal. You have to speak to him from an emotional perspective. And that's why when the godly soul is able to bring down its intellect into the emotions, that's how it communicates its ideas, its ideals, its excitements into the animal experience, that the animal starts also to get excited about God. And then you're fulfilling the purpose of creation by taking the low, dark world. You're transforming the klipa, the unholy, into godliness. So he says, it's only through this it becomes the zichuch. Zichuch means the refinement, ubiruren, and the purification, the nefesh bahamas of the animal soul. If you're only serving God with your mind, it does not, you don't yet uproot, and you don't become elevated from the coarseness of the animal soul. What does that mean? We'll see. We'll see in a moment. Only when you bring down your experiences into love and fear, you bring your intellectual contemplations and meditations, you make sure not to stop until you can feel something in your heart. It's only then, which means love and fear, which is the mitzvah that we're supposed to do every day by the Shema, by the prayer. Main purpose of prayer is all of this. It's only then when slowly but surely one changes, one's natural self changes from being and completely, grub, as you say in Yiddish, coarse and dense and full of self, and you change that, and you become more refined. You become a pure human being, and that's the objective. And that's why you find, as we see, that you have a lot of people that are very great intellectuals, they have great understanding, and a lot of people, to a certain degree, all those who study Hasidus feel this to a certain degree sometimes, that if we're not putting in the work to bring things down and to elevate, that we can be the greatest philosophers in Hasidic thought, with a lot of knowledge and a lot of understanding, but as a human being, you don't so connected, have such deep, aware connections to Hashem, and then God forbid they fall into the most, unholy things, and you wonder, how is it the same person? And the answer is because they're lacking the connection which happens through the emotions. He says, however, there is an exception. There are certain souls whose work is not so much from the bottom up, which means to work on refining themselves. They have such a powerful neshama that by just shining the light of their soul, then everything becomes illuminated. Like Moshe Rabbeinu, the moment he was born, it said the house became full of light. His main thing, Moshe Rabbeinu, was to be a channel of God into the world. So the moment he was born, all the klipa of the world disappear just from the light. So there are some it already automatically fills their entire persona. So they to transform their only people whose service is to shine light from above. So they just got to just illuminate their minds, and the klipa runs away. But for most, in their animal conscious service, the labor of love and fear, and explains why it's the love. Why does intellectualism not suffice? Because the animal soul, ikroi humidos, the animal soul is primarily an emotional being. It's not so much an intellectual. The godly soul, its strength is in the intellect. The animal soul is much stronger in its emotions, and therefore the godly soul resides primarily in the mind. It has a seat. It has a space in the heart as well, in the right side of the heart, like explained in Tanya. But the animal soul, its main residence is in the heart. It can get up to the mind as too and pollute the mind also with its selfish things. But its main stronghold, its essence, its nucleus is in the heart. And therefore, in order to change the animal experience, you got to penetrate the heart. And therefore, also the enclosement of the godly soul into the animal soul, where the godly soul makes a makeover in the animal soul, it's mainly in the emotions. What he's saying is that when you intellectualize and have a deep meditation and understanding in God, you're not really engaging with your animal soul. It's not so much affecting anyone. There's a little bit, of course, yeah, but it's very little, because it's not so. It's a godly experience. It's like you took respite from your animal soul and you went up into your deeper godly self, but you're not communicating with the animal soul. You're not investing yourself in the animal soul. The main investment and entanglement with the animal soul, where the godly soul entangles and wrestles with the animal soul, is in the emotions. And it's only there. That's where you affect the refinement, the nefesh bahamis of the animal soul, which is the objective of why God put us in this world. And therefore, in our avodah of the mind, even though you're in a state of closeness and dveikus and attachment in your mind, you can find a lot of times people, he says, that have very great connection in their head, but still, Yachal is the nefesh bahamis, that the coarseness of the animal soul, who b'makaymai, remains as strong, doesn't budge, u'betakvay adayin, and in its full power, and hasn't even made one iota of a change. V'rak ba'ava v'yira, and it's only when you have love and fear, be his galos alev, that fills the revealed part of the heart, which means fully fills the emotions. That weakens the animal soul. Before it transforms it, it first weakens it. That means that its passion and its drives to the material world gets a little less, because you introduce to it a higher world, a higher reality, and it can see that there are more important things, and it can start looking at itself as being utterly ridiculous, about being so petty and so coarse, to the point that the animal soul starts laughing at itself, which I hope we can bring ourselves to. And then eventually you can get him on board. That's the point. You cause a weakness in the animal soul. Its coarseness has become weakened. And also the nullification of two things. It gets first weakened, and then you can ultimately nullify it. And the animal soul that feels itself so much. As stated elsewhere. The alkane, and therefore, a person should not suffice in service the mochen lavad of the intellect alone. That's why it's of greatest importance that there needs to be the work with love and fear of the heart. However, that is in terms of objective. But if you're talking about where is there more godly light, of course in the head. But in terms of the revelation, yesh yisrin gadol, there's a very great advantage b'moichin in the mind. Because since the mind is the nature of intellect is that it is nullified to whatever it is it's exploring. It's not about self. It's about what it is exploring. In our case, it's exploring God. So it's in a state of bittul. Meir behem, it can shine in them, gilui or a revelation of light, much more than the emotions. V'hamidos, and the emotions. Lihiyoisam b'pchinas metzios, the emotions, since they are more thicker, mismat behem or, the light gets diminished. She'eina meir behem begilui kol klal, kamoy b'mochin. It's not shining in them at all, and not even close. The light does not shine in the emotions anywhere close to the way they shine in the mochin, in the mind. Kitzer. So let's do the kitzer on the chapter. He's now going to do the summary. We concluded Mazel Tov, chapter 33. Let's do quickly the summary. Through the lights becoming vested in the vessels. That's when they get divided, up and down. Just like in the powers of the soul. The initial power of Chachma, which is the first flash. Which is a flash. Mufshetes, it's abstract. Adayin meir ba. In it's still present. Dakus etzema, or the fineness of the essence of the light, the brightness of the light. V'koyach abina, and bina shuasaga, which is grasping, which is much more vessel. Harei umalemes ala or, it conceals the light. Shabach chachma, that's a chachma. Ubenekudas hatamtzes, he says in the parentheses. Remember, we learned this. Benekudas hatamtzes, and when you get back to summarizing it. After the bina, you can get back to a point of chachma meir dakus etzema or, then you can return back to the refinement of the essence of the light. The aval hu b'morgish, but it's still a little denser. So you feel it more. V'hamidos, and now he goes, but it gets even more thicker when it gets the emotions. And hergish atzma, it's a feeling of self. That's why midos need das dafka. And das, we said, is self-awareness. However, we spoke about that there are certain loves that are not self-aware. It's not based on self-centeredness, but that's not really called a love. That's the love that a person has to himself, the things that are you, like your love to your children. We had that discussion already. I'm just reviewing quickly the kitzer, so I'm not going to go through all of this. We can listen to earlier classes. The essential love is not really an emotion. It's really a ratzon, or desire. You want what is your essence and yourself and your substance. But an emotion is what you love, what is good for you, from you sense yourself there. That's why midah, emotions, always connect to something about the thing you're loving, not the substance of what you love, but the qualities of it. But desire, is reaching the essence. Because when you have a desire for something, which means a love that's called desire, which is much more essential love, it's not the qualities of what you're loving that you're reaching for. It's the essence of it. It's like you reach for your children, it's their essence. It's not the and so spiritually, you can have a desire without even love. You can have, and then he explained this, that the emotions come from the intellect. It's only from the emotions of the intellect. And over there you're feeling only the essence of the goodness of it. But in emotions you feel more the self, that it's good for me. It's good. Again, I'm going through this fast. Please don't try to understand this on its own, because this is all just a summary of what we learned earlier. That's why we also learned that the emotions will only get excited after you get a little distracted from the mochin. As long as you're deeply involved in the intellectual experience, you don't even feel your emotions. Like we discussed, how a roar in a stadium will only happen after the act is over. And they're a state of excitement, and that's why there's much less light over there. Now, in mochin itself, we learned the main bittul is in chachma. Bina is already a little thicker. And then the last point is that we learned today, that in avoda it's a must. You have to bring the emotions out, because that's how you fix the body. Number one, through that is the fulfillment of mitzvahs. Number two, and through that one rectifies his animal self. With this, we conclude chapter 33, and we should see Mashiach today. Be'ezus Hashem, stay tuned next week for the continuation in chapter 34.